In this lecture, we're going to look at the relationship between innovations developed in ecosystems and risks. We're going to see there are two main types of risks, which we're going to call value innovation risk and co-innovation risks. What we're going to say is valid also for ecosystems that are based on platforms, but it also applies to the case of innovations developed in ecosystems that are not supported by a platform. I have already defined what I mean by ecosystem. An ecosystem is a network describing a set of relationships among actors, organizations, companies, institutions, individuals, public centers and so on, that are tied by interdependencies, and some of the interdependencies are win-win and some of them might be symbiotic. Having said what an ecosystem is, then let me introduce a distinction between two types of innovation. The innovation that I call standalone innovation, this is an innovation that might be introduced in an ecosystem and does not require a reconfiguration of the ecosystem. When I talk about a reconfiguration, I mean the fact that some links might be broken, so some players might not be necessary, might exit the ecosystem, that some new actors might be added, so we may need to introduce new links, and that the nature of some of the links might change. So a standalone innovation is an innovation that does not require a change in the network underlying the ecosystem. Okay? Instead, an ecosystemic innovation is an innovation that, by converse, requires a reconfiguration of the ecosystem. A reconfiguration might involve the entry of new actors or the exit of some actors or the change in the nature of relationships among the actors. The first type of risk we're going to look at in innovations in ecosystems is called adoption chain risk. And to do that, I'm going to illustrate via the case of a particular innovation developed by Michelin. Let me please state at this time that most of this lecture is taken by a book written by Ron Adner called The Wide Lens. So if you want to learn more about this, the source is The Wide Lens by Adner. The case of the run-flat technology, also called PAX. First, a couple of words about Michelin. Michelin has been historically probably the most important company in terms of innovation in the tire industry. Michelin has introduced some of the most important innovations over the years, over the century plus old of the tire industry, namely the radial tire. The industry of the tire is an extremely competitive, it's a cutthroat industry, margins are very low and competition is extreme. The industry, toward the end of the last century, the industry had been based on, the industry was relatively static, meaning that there had been very few innovations that had changed the nature of the industry itself. What is the run-flat technology? At the end of the last century, Michelin wanted to revolutionize the tire industry. So they introduced a new type of tire that would basically eliminate the risk and danger associated with a flat tire. How did they do that? They developed a special system that would let drivers drive safely over a long distance, almost 200 kilometers at a relatively high speed, well, around 80, about 90, 100 kilometers per hour, with a flat tire without any change in the driving conditions and without any additional risk. The innovation, the PAX, didn't compromise the quality of driving. Drivers may not even notice that they had a flat tire, so it didn't decrease performance, It did increase safety dramatically so, and at the same time it opened up new design possibilities for automakers. Okay, so the important point is that the need was the need to eliminate danger associated with flat tires. The innovation was extremely successful. The expectations were that run flat tires would dominate the industry of tires. They could become as commonplace as fold flat seats, and in the space of few years they would revolutionize the tire industry. So what is the pack system? The pack system is, as the word says, a system, not a component. Michelin was used to working with the design of a component. A component was the tire that was weakly connected to the wheel. Instead, in this case, the pack system required the entire redesign of the system, tire plus wheel, which now became composed of three parts rather than two. The three parts were the wheel, the inner ring that doesn't exist in the traditional system, and the tire. The inner ring is what guaranteed drivability even with a flat tire. In order to insert the inner ring, the wheel had to be redesigned, and the connection of the three now became tight, meaning that it would be difficult to remove the tire without specialized equipment. Not only so, but in order to guarantee drivability, the wheel has got an automatic pressure monitor sensor, which is inserted inside the wheel, and the pressure is monitored via the dashboard of the car. So this system required not only the redesign of the wheel tire system, but also partly the redesign of the car itself. Also, because the system eliminates the need for a spare tire, manufacturers can redesign cars and utilize the space that would have been given for the space tire as in other ways. Notice that the PAC's innovation system required Michelin to change nature from a provider of a component to a system integrator. System integrator means that now you come to depend on the companies that design and manufacture the other parts, meaning, of course, the wheel itself, the car manufacturers with whom the interaction would become much tighter, and so on and so forth. Was there a need for the PACs? Yes. At the beginning of last decade, really, the indication was that the major source of accidents and danger, at least in the United States, but the conditions were similar in the rest of the world, were underinflated or flat tires. Customers were aware of the risk of flat tires, and so the industry received the Michelin's innovation with high expectations. So the expectations regarded the manufacturers who would gain in reliability for the cars, so the cars would be seen as higher quality. Second, of course, the manufacturers of tires would achieve higher profits deriving from an innovation, but even the garage, the maintenance parts, the garage related to the maintenance of tires, saw the opportunity of higher value services which will produce higher profits. So it seems that the whole automotive system was favorably predisposed to the PAC's innovation. The introduction of the packs, the design especially, was extremely difficult. But Michelin performed its planning strategy and implementing strategy brilliantly, meaning the innovation was protected by strong patents. Second, the technical challenges that were enormous were solved in a relatively short time and very effectively. Third, a problem of the supply chain of automotive is that assemblers do not want to depend on single suppliers. So single sourcing is not well regarded because of the hostage situation that might create for assemblers. Michelin, to avoid this, Michelin established a deal with Goodyear. Goodyear is the third largest tire manufacturers that started, and Goodyear started producing packs via license. Michelin launched the innovation in 2001, and in the space of a few years, several important manufacturers agreed to fit their cars with PAX tires, namely Mercedes, Cadillac, Renault. They started from the top end of their offerings, but in the space of a few years, it seemed that the whole automotive world would switch to PAX. The expectation was that in less than a decade, most cars would be fitted with run flats. Anyway, things didn't go according to expectations. In 2007, after encountering massive losses, Michelin announced the end of PAX. So what went wrong? What went wrong essentially is an ecosystem problem that Michelin didn't consider. So let's have a look at the ecosystem of tires. There are basically two segments: the OEM accounting for a quarter of the market, the replacement market accounting for 3/4 of the market. In the OEM, the main relationship is between Michelin and car manufacturers. And then, of course, the driver follows. In the replacement market, instead, Michelin serves tire dealers that who then serve drivers. Although the replacement market is much bigger than the OEM market, it depends on the OEM market because customers tend to stick to the original tire brand. This makes then the replacement market dependent on the OEM market. Now, did the PAX system change the traditional ecosystem? The answer is yes. So that means that we can classify that innovation as an ecosystemic innovation. What did change? A simple look at the figure tells us that the two segments were now became one segment, but also a new player was introduced in the ecosystem, essentially the service garages. Now, we have already mentioned that the run flat created a stronger interdependency between the PAX and the car manufacturer, because car manufacturer had to redesign their cars in order to fit the PAX tire. That means that the decision to use PAX had to be taken something like 3 years in advance before the cars actually hit the road with the new tires. But that relationship was managed well. Michelin managed well the transition from a component manufacturer to a system integrator. A system integrator, you have got to do co-design and to work much closely with your partners in a typical ecosystemic system. The service garages, though, was a different matter. The service garages are to do 3 things in order to serve the PAX system. First, they are to invest in expensive equipment to do the maintenance of the PAX system. Second, they are to be retrained about how to do that. And third, they are to be certified. All of this at their cost. So what happened is that the garages waited to see whether there was enough demand for their services before investing in technology, retraining, and certification. But then what happened is that when the first cars hit the road, customers didn't find any garages that could serve them. So they were obliged to buy new expensive run flat tires rather than have them serviced because there were no garages that actually were ready to do so. This determined an increasingly sour relationship between drivers and car manufacturers, because car manufacturers accused drivers accused car manufacturers of having missed a crucial link in the after sales, basically maintenance of a critical component of a car. This generated class actions against the car manufacturers, and the class actions and the bad reputation then of the service of tires critically slowed down the diffusion of cars fitted with the PAC system. So the PAC system didn't extend, and the garages didn't see any reason to really invest in the services of PACs. In the space of a few years, Michelin announced it was withdrawing from the development of PACs, and that was the end. So what went wrong is that Michelin and the car manufacturers together didn't consider that what was crucial for the garages was the timing So although the garages saw an opportunity in PACs because they saw the opportunity of selling higher value services, generating high profits, what Michelin and the car manufacturers didn't ask was not whether they would adopt PACs, is when they would adopt PACs. If they had asked that question, then the answer would have been when there are sufficient number of cars with PACs for us to invest in this new market. They didn't ask that question. They asked whether they would invest in PACs, and the answer was yes. But there was a crucial misunderstanding behind it, and the crucial misunderstanding came from the fact that Michelin was not used to act in an ecosystem environment. In an ecosystem environment, it's crucial to look in advance at value adoption risk. The adoption risk, or the value chain adoption risk, is the fact that an innovation may fail in the market because one crucial link might not have considered and might not have been actively managed. In fact, in general, if you look at two innovations, let's say innovation A, innovation B, the innovation, and let's imagine that we can quantify the value delivered to the single players of the ecosystem. So let's say innovation A, the innovator gets 4+, the distributor gets 3+, the retailer gets a minus, and the end customer gets lots of value, 5+. The total value is very large. The average is large, but there is a minimum. Now let's look at innovation B. Innovation B delivers much less value to each of the players, but there's no minimum, or better, the minimum is above 0. So which of those two innovations are likely to be more successful in an ecosystem? You may take a moment to think about it. Well, clearly, the innovation A is the case of the PACs system. Why? Because in this case, the service garages didn't see an incentive to invest in the technology before they could be sure that there was effective demand to regain their investment. And that condemned the innovation. So what matters when we talk about adoption chain risk is to look to identify the players and to look whether they all have an incentive from the beginning to invest in the innovation. If one of them has got a negative incentive, then the other innovators or the other players of the ecosystem, or if there is a focal player, the focal player should invest in providing some kind of incentives to make the weak link invest in the innovation. For instance, what the car manufacturers could have done is to establish some kind of financial incentives for garages to invest in the PAC system, or alternatively, they could have integrated downstream to create their own garages to serve PACs, or they have provided financial incentives to dealers to develop garages, etc., etc., etc. But what matters is that if we're talking about adoption chain risk, it's important to identify all the players involved in introduction innovation, and to see whether from the very beginning they have an incentive to invest in it, so they expect to be profitable from day one.